Winter is coming. Before we dive into this video, I need to warn you. This video may scare some viewers and it's not suitable for those that like to run away from their problems. Watch at your discretion. Most people are about to be completely wiped out and they don't even know it. So if you own an agency or business, or for that matter, just care about your financial well-being, I need you to pay attention. Not just for your sake, but for your employees, your family, and most importantly, your future self. Now, I hate to be dramatic, but things are not looking good, and sugarcoating it isn't going to do anything, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. And I'll be honest, I wasn't planning on releasing this recording. This is a recording from a private talk that I did at a private mastermind event at a 17,000 square foot mega mansion that people paid a lot of money to be at. It was so exclusive that we only had 15 high-level agency owners there, and you probably know most of them. But for far too long, the wealthiest people in the world have had access to information that only normal people could dream of knowing. This is why I felt compelled to change the way things have been done and just give my entire talk away to you. The information is genuinely that important for you to know. Now, 99% of people will not take action on this, but if I could just help the 1% that's hopefully you that will take action, that will make this all worth it, because their entire financial trajectory will likely change. The scary part isn't that I had to make a video about this. The scarier part is that since recording the original video, things have actually gotten worse, with talks of the United States defaulting on its debt and more bank runs and interest rates going up. The video is on the longer side, but this is genuinely the most important thing you could be doing with your time right now if you care about your business or your finances. With that being said, you can watch the video at 1.5 to 2x speed to speed things up. Make sure that you don't have any distractions and just have a pen and paper ready so that you can properly digest the information so that you can create a game plan on what's going to be best for you and your financial well-being. The last thing that I'll mention is I'm not an economist, I'm not a CPA, I'm not a financial advisor, but I am a person that has invested a lot of time and has just made it a priority to focus on what's going on in the world economy, globally, domestically, and also how I can protect myself. So everything in this presentation is based off all the data, information, and just the Rolodex of people that I have access to that has really helped me protect my own wealth. Good luck, Godspeed, and I'll see you at the end of the video.
For the one and only, cheers. Bring them out, bring them out, hey. Bring them out, bring them out, bring them out.
So guys, what I want to talk to you about today is not directly related to the agency game, but it is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I genuinely believe that if you don't understand this, then most of the time you will never understand how to actually build real wealth, which is why we're all here. Winter is coming, guys. Winter is coming. Does anyone else have that same feeling? Like there's something going on, that we just came out of a crazy time with record low interest rates. People were making FU money for doing nothing, selling, what are those things called? NFTs and all this weird shit, just making money out of thin air. My great-great-grandfather was a slave. His father was a sharecropper. His father had a third-grade education, and my father was the first one to go to college and build a successful business. I have lived the American dream. And I'm so grateful for this country. We were doing stick dedication yesterday, and someone was talking about America. I think it was Dave. I'm super, super grateful for this country. And because of that, I have a lot of emotions about where we're going. Our way of life is being threatened, and I'm not talking about Democrats versus Republicans. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. I'm talking about American principles versus non-American principles. That's really where the fight is. And this isn't a political presentation. It has nothing to do with politics. You and all men are here for the sake of other men. With that being said, that leads to mission. And something that Jacob talked about yesterday is mission. Something that Jasmine talked about yesterday is mission. They didn't necessarily say it, but deep down inside, that's what they were saying. That's what they were getting at. Mission. Once again, I had the fortunate experience to meet Robert Kiyosaki's entire team last week in Phoenix. They have a 9-person team, multi-billion-dollar company. They have been the #1 personal finance book for 25 years on the bestseller list. And they've educated people around the entire world. They are one of the only books on this planet that has been published in every single language, not every single country, every single language. And they have a 9-person team, extremely nimble, really cool, right? Their revenue per head is, we were talking about revenue per head with Dave, their revenue per head is insane. But the reason why I say that is because they all got on stage and they all make a lot of money. They all have their own side businesses, real estate, but at the end of the day, they show up because they care about the mission. That's why they're doing what they're doing. That's why Brandon and I are here. That's why you guys are here. There's a mission. Brandon and I could be running our agencies right now. What I'm going to make at this event, we'll do in half a day at the agency. It's not about the money. The mission at this event is to empower people to become financially free so that they can live the American dream. I have been extremely fortunate and blessed, and I want to make sure that each and every one of you guys can do that for yourselves, your families, your kids, and future generations. All right, so why? Why is that important? I see a route that we're going, and quite frankly, I just don't like it. And history repeats itself. And if history, rather than me tell you, let me show you the actions of what our leaders, or former leaders, even in other countries have done when we've been in similar situations as to what we are dealing with in America. This is a quote from one of our founding fathers and presidents, Thomas Jefferson. "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, then the banks and corporations that will grow around the banks will deprive the people of the property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." Thomas Jefferson. I want you guys to remember that quote as we go through this presentation. All right, it's going to make a lot of sense in a second. Political power does not rest with those that cast votes, it rests with those that count them. Joseph Stalin, communist leader of the Soviet Union. A heavy or progressive graduated income tax is necessary for the proper development of communism. Karl Marx, one of the authors of the Communist Manifesto. Sell a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man how to fish, and you ruin a wonderful business opportunity. Keep these dates in mind that I'm about to list. Americans fought for independence not in 1776, it was in 1773, the Boston Tea Party, over taxes. Very interesting. We did not have an income tax until World War II, a permanent income tax. The IRS was created in 1913, along with the Federal Reserve. A few years later, the Great Depression happened. In 1944, the United States became the world reserve currency with the Bretton Woods Agreement. In 1971, President Richard Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. Guys, this is going to make a lot of sense in a second. Basically making the US dollar a complete fiat currency. The average Joe doesn't know this, and that's why their finances are average. Now, one thing that I have to note about this, guys, this is not going to be the sexiest presentation. I'm not doing this to hype you up. I can come up with a million different things to hype you up. That's what yesterday was about. How to build a 7-figure agency in 30 days. If you guys aren't paying attention, get out. I don't want you here. I need you guys paying attention. This is super important for future generations. If you guys don't understand wealth, if you don't understand how money works, if you don't understand it, you'll never make it. You'll make short-term gains, but that will not last because it doesn't matter how much money you make. What matters is how much you keep. This is the reason why we all brought you here today. Once again, you cannot become wealthy if you don't truly understand money. You cannot become wealthy if you don't truly understand money. You can understand how to make money, but you can't be wealthy if you don't understand it. Choosing to hide from the history of it because it's boring or it doesn't excite you is ignorant, and you're doing yourself a massive disservice. And so many entrepreneurs choose to do this. So before we begin learning about how to make more of it, let's learn more about it. First, let's understand where we are with the economy now. Guys, I wish I could face you, but honestly, I did this at 5 a.m. in the morning last night, or this morning, so I don't remember everything, so I'm going to have to be looking at this a lot, so I apologize. With that being said, who here believes we're headed in the right direction? There's no right or wrong answer with the economy, at least in the short term. Who here thinks that we're heading in the right direction? Raise your hand. Okay. Who here thinks we're headed in the wrong direction? Okay. We're going to look at one simple metric that has never been wrong. Never. In the history of macroeconomics. The inverted yield curve. Anyone know what that is? It's a warning system, right? So what this is This is not the inverted yield curve, by the way. This is a weather system. So let's say we're in Hawaii and there's a tsunami. There's going to be something in the ground, basically a sensor, that is able to track what's going on underwater because we can't see it. And it reports back to the satellites up above that a tsunami is coming. The damage has not occurred yet, but the damage is on its way. So it's a warning system to let us know what's about to happen. Same exact thing with the yield curve. Once again, this is the number one metric that has never been wrong in modern economics. So this is the 10-year treasury curve, basically. It's the yield. So as you can see, they should be gray technically, but I think they're red. The red lines, the vertical red lines, you guys see them? Yep. Those are recessions or depressions. Okay? So I want you to keep an eye out on this. So as you can see, I wish I was tall enough, I'm pretty short, but as you can see, that line, that horizontal line on the bottom, the constant line, as you can see, the actual yield, the interest that people are making from their treasuries, it dips. You guys see the dip that I'm talking about, right? The arrows are pointing to it. So we didn't hit a recession we don't hit recessions when it dips, and I'll explain why in a second. We hit recessions when it starts to go back up, when it goes past that constant and we get into a recession. So it happened in 1990. It happened in 2000 with the dot-com bubble. It happened in 2008, a recession. And as you can see, it happened in 2020. That was COVID. And there's a more updated chart that I'm about to share with you guys in a second. Now, recession. Recession is a mindset. But there are massive implications to this next recession that are totally different than the mini recession that we had during COVID and what you guys have been used to, because most of us in this room, some of us, but most of us in this room don't really remember what happened in 2008. We don't really remember what happened in the dot-com crisis. We just were not old enough. We have not been through it. So the length of the recession has increased. If you look at the curves, do you guys see how the length is increasing over time between the recessions? Like they're getting longer and longer? The distance, yeah, exactly. Yes, the distance is getting longer. The reason why is because there is more debt in the system. So as we continue to pump more debt into the system, the recession gets a lot longer. The 10-year should be higher than the 2-year. So the 10-year yield should increase because, for example, when you're loaning money out, if it's a 10-year term, you're going to charge them more interest than if it was a 2-year term, right? Because there's more inherent risk in lending them that money, correct? Okay, so in this situation, right now what's going on in the world is we are actually giving people a higher rate for a 2-year yield versus a 10-year yield. So what does that mean? So the reason why we're not getting a higher rate is because institutional investors realize that in the next 10 years, things aren't looking pretty and that there's less risk over the next 2 years, which it should be the opposite. You guys all agree? Am I explaining this correctly? Cool. I love that line. I'm going to keep using that. All right, so diving in, the recession occurs when the yield goes up. It doesn't occur when it goes down. It occurs when the yield goes up. The Fed comes in and they're trying to fix it. Right? They try to increase rates, but industries go out of business because they increase rates. Banks can't handle that. Banks lose money because of that, because there's so much toxic assets in the system that has caused it to go down. So they raise rates, and then we have all those issues like we saw in 2008. So why does the Fed raise rates? Number one, to combat inflation. So we've had higher than normal inflation over the last few years. Number two, when we're in a recession, you can't have negative rates. So one of the tools in the Federal Reserve's toolbox is that they can raise rates, lower rates, or they can print more money, quantitative easing, or they can take out money, quantitative tightening. So in this instance, if we're in a recession and we're already at 2%, 1% rates, interest rates, 3% rates, they can't go much lower. It's not going to do anything. So they have to raise rates Now, because the Fed knows, Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, realizes that if he doesn't raise rates now, he's not going to have any ammo for his weapons when it actually hits. Am I explaining myself correctly? Guys, this is going to make sense as to why I'm talking about this, but it is so important. And listen, the first time I heard this stuff, it was mumbo jumbo. I've been studying this stuff for 5 years. It's actually what got me into entrepreneurship because of the fear of what's going on in the global economy and here domestically at home as well. The Fed has to raise rates. They have to. They don't really have a choice. They said that they are going to raise rates. Now, they've also said that they're not going to raise rates, but then they've raised rates. So who knows what they're going to do, but they're most likely going to continue to raise rates. The United States has a fractional reserve system. So basically, what does that mean? If I deposit $1,000 into my bank, I bank at TD Bank. If I deposit $1,000, the bank has to keep $100 in reserves. They can lend out. How do banks make money? By lending. They can lend out $900. So at this point, the bank is going to lend out $900 to someone else. They're going to deposit that into a bank. So then that bank is going to reserve $100, and then they're going to lend out $800. You see how that's making sense, guys? Cool. And the cycle's going to keep repeating itself over and over again, basically to a point where the reserves are minuscule. So the interesting thing that has happened is COVID wasn't the most detrimental thing in 2020. Anyone know what it was?
That's 4 years we have predicted more than 40% of the.
That's a big thing right there. That's one of the big things, but that's not exactly what I was talking about, but that is in my presentation. So you are right. You're on track. The biggest thing is that the Fed reduced the fractional reserve requirement to zero. To zero. We were talking, Alex, I know I'm going to pick on you. We were talking about the increased regulation since 2008. The banks don't have to hold any of our money. What regulation is that? They're able to completely gamble away our money without any repercussions. It's legal. It's completely legal. The money in your banks right now, so actually, I'll talk about it. Would you carry a $100,000 Amex bill with no money, with no liquidity in your checking account? Does that make any sense? Imagine doing that as a business owner. Having a $100K Amex bill that you have to pay off in 30 days with no liquidity. And you're continually adding debt. You're not increasing your cash flow. You're just adding debt. Especially since because of the business that you're in, people are using your products less and less because rates are higher. Because rates are higher, people aren't buying as many homes. They're not getting as many credit cards. So you have less income coming in, more debt, and you have no reserves. You don't need to have a Nobel Prize in economics to understand what that's going to lead to. If you place $200,000 in the bank, they're not holding any of it. There's no liquidity in the bank.
It's mandatory if they go under, they got to give you $250, right?
That's not the banks. I'll talk about that in a second. So how do banks make money? Once again, mortgages, credit cards, these are their products. They generate a yield from that. They generate interest from those securities. So the Fed raises rates, and it lowers the demand for those products. At the same time, the bank has no liquidity. So the Fed raises rates. This is the cycle. The banks have no liquidity. Depositors withdraw in excess to what the banks hold. Didn't this just happen? Anyone know what I'm talking about? There you go. Exactly what just happened. The bank fails. Regional banks suffer because the Federal Reserve and Janet Yellen, who is the Secretary of Treasury, and Jerome Powell, and the President of the United States, President Joe Biden, have all said that they will not bail out regional small banks that go under. They're not going to bail out these regional small banks. There are over 4,000 banks in the United States. There are a handful of major banks. Basically, what they just said is that they are going to protect the big players in the field, but they're not going to protect the little guys. So what do you think depositors are going to do that have an excess of $250,000, which is the FDIC insurance per account, when they realize that the Federal Reserve, the Secretary of Treasury, and the President are not going to protect them? They're going to move their money where? to big banks because the Federal Reserve did what? And the Secretary of Treasury said what? They're going to bail them out. Exactly. High five yourselves. Tell yourselves that you're smart, you guys. No, each other. So the regional banks are going to suffer. Banking crisis. The power will be given to a few big banks. In Canada, there are 5 major banks, and that's it. In the United States, there's over 4,000. What happens when there's monopolies? What happens if Alex Hormozy was the only gym agency, Gym Launch was the only gym agency in the fitness space? They could charge whatever they want to charge, and they could also have a shitty service. What does competition do? There you go. So Ben Bernanke, who used to be the Fed chairman, he tried to fix the issue. He got a Nobel Prize for doing it. He didn't do anything besides make the bubble bigger. We see it today. So he basically tried to fix everything with duct tape, and he created a low-bearing wall for those of you in construction, and now it's completely unstable and it's about to collapse. This is what a bank run looks like. It's happened in the United States. It's happened as recent as literally a few weeks ago. So for those of you that think, oh, this isn't going to happen again, there's tighter regulations. This isn't the Great Depression. We've improved. You're living in a f***ing fairy tale. The FDIC only has 0.01% liquid for all deposits. 0.01% liquid for all deposits. There's $18 trillion in deposits in the United States right now. The FDIC is the insurance for the federal insurance program for banks. So if a bank goes under, people are supposed to be protected. But if there's a few bank runs that are in excess of that 0.01%, how are they going to pay those depositors that lost their money because the banks have zero liquidity? $1 trillion was moved last week alone. $1 trillion out of 18 trillion, that's 5%, in a single week, was moved out of banks.
Wow. Oh, you saying people just start depositing and taking their money out?
Yes.
Oh, it's like civilians.
Yeah, $1 trillion. Those aren't your mom and pop stores with a small checking account. Those are institutions that are smarter than all of us when it comes to something like this, and they see and they have connections, and they see what's going on. $1 trillion. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, just gave a deadline that all central banks need to have a digital currency by 2035. Basically, a Fed coin would be what it would look like in the United States. So the government will know every single dollar that you spend, every single dollar. It will be a complete cashless society, and instead of you having an Amex or a Visa at your bank, the Fed is going to have you bank with them.
You think it's going to happen?
It's already happening.
You think
They have to. It's mandated. The IMF just said that the central banks have to do it. President Biden just signed an executive order that said we need to expedite the process.
Can't Trump get in there and stop it?
You can only spend money in a 5-mile radius. Now, I'm not saying this is what they're going to do, but they would have the power to do this. If you go outside of this area, you're not going to have access to your accounts because it's the government. They're in control. They are the only institution where all of your money is held. What happens when someone controls one of the most precious assets that you have? What happens? And you don't have any other options. It's going to be mandated. You donated money to Jared Curry's political campaign for president, and the government says they don't like that. You're now an enemy of the people. And they're going to regulate you. They're going to look at what you're spending money on. They're going to do investigations, things like that. You'll be taxed more for buying certain products versus other products. You buy from, yeah, but to a greater scale because now they know exactly what you're buying. For example, they don't like Chick-fil-A because of Chick-fil-A's values, so you're gonna have to pay more for Chick-fil-A. Something like that, right? Now, this is all speculation, I will say, but that's just complete market manipulation. But that's what would be possible with the Federal Reserve creating something like a Fed coin. Going back to my quote originally by Thomas Jefferson, one of our founding fathers, I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thomas Jefferson. Doesn't that sound pretty familiar to what I just said? Interesting. Every country has to hold dollars. We are the U.S. reserve currency. Remember in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement, I talked about it earlier. There's $100 trillion outside of the U.S. that's circulated between nations. The BRICS Agreement. Mexico just joined in March, and Japan is rumored to join soon. BRICS is an agreement that basically is going to allow China to buy oil and other developing and emerging countries to buy oil with their own currencies. This is the first time since 1944 that has happened, and they're already doing it. This isn't speculation that this stuff is going to happen. It's already happening. The first time since 1944, and I'll explain why that's important. Alex, you paying attention? The US dollar will lose its hegemony, which is basically leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. What will replace it? Probably a gold-backed Chinese digital yuan, because that's what's already happening. It's already in use. They used it in the Olympics, actually, and they mandated that you have to be using the Chinese yuan, the digital yuan, in order to buy anything. You couldn't buy anything with your Amex, Visa, cash. They wouldn't accept it. It had to be through their currency. Couldn't use crypto, right? So it's already happening. The result, trillions of US dollars will be flowing back into the United States, causing hyperinflation. I'll explain why. The result, America and the Western world's poor and middle class will grow poorer as inflation becomes systemic, not transitory. Jerome Powell said that this is transitory. It's not.
The process of inflation will stop.
If you look at the US dollar since the Federal Reserve was created till now, especially when we took the dollar off the US reserve currency, you guys have seen the chart where the dollar has decreased in value, right? When is there a single time in history where the value of the US dollar has gone up? Have you seen a chart like that? Gone up consistently. I'm talking about for years. I'm not talking about in the Forex market where the value is going to go up a little bit. I'm talking about over a long period of time. Has anyone seen that? It's not true. It's a lie because it's a fiat currency. So he was lying when he said that. It's here to stay. It's just going to get worse. Why? Because the BRICS agreement between OPEC, which is the oil-producing countries, that's where we get our oil from, it powers America. It powers the world. OPEC allows them to buy oil without the United States. And the reason why is because the United States has said that they're going green, that we're going green. We don't need oil from the Saudis anymore, from OPEC. And because of that, they're going to partner with someone who's going to continue using oil, such as China and a lot of these emerging countries. Because of that, they have no need for the United States to be the world reserve currency. We do know there's no benefit. It's a simple business transaction. You provide value to me, I'm going to provide value to you. I take away the value, you're going to go to someone else who can provide you value. It's that simple. The U.S. will cut ties with OPEC by going green. The second and third world will not be doing that. They can't afford to go green. The second and third world, which is a majority of the world population, will still be using oil. We just won't. That's fine. But at the same time, they're also not going to be using the U.S. dollar anymore. So what does that mean for us at home? Why does that matter? Wake up, guys. Wake up. If you stand up. Ben, stand up. Stand up. Wake them up, Bern. You guys aren't sleeping during the presentation. Get up. Get up. Stand there. No, guys, I'm serious. This is important. I am doing this for you. All right, you guys can sit down. You're standing. I want you guys to learn because without this information, you will be put in a horrible position because no one is teaching this. Why? Because it's not sexy, but this is the stuff that's going to protect you and your wealth. Fact versus opinion. Once again, I don't have to do this. I already did a presentation this week. Right? Facts don't care about your emotions. They don't care. You can think and you can live in this fantasy that everything's going to be okay, but the facts don't back that up. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself by thinking, oh, if I just focus, if I just do what I'm supposed to do, I'll be fine. I don't need to worry about what else is going on. That can work in the short, yes, to a certain extent, and that can work in the short term, but it's not a long-term play. It's not a long-term play. One of the biggest things I've taken from Hormozy, and there's a few, but one of the things that I've taken, especially from our meetings with him, is his long-term thinking. This is one of the few things that you definitely want to think long-term about. We can't sugarcoat our way out of it. It's gonna happen. It's already happening. Fact, quantitative easing, QE, is legalized counterfeiting of money. That's when the government induces a bunch of money into the system. 40% increase in 2020, I believe, or 2021, don't quote me, in our money supply. In 1 year, a 40% increase. If you went and tried to do that, you would go to jail. It's counterfeiting. QE violates Gresham's law when bad money drives out good money. You can't have bad money driving out good money. The reason why QE happened is because it gave the institutions the ability to buy back. The Fed was basically buying back toxic assets of these institutions because the institutions were getting risky. But there's regulation, right? So why did the Fed have to buy all these assets and increase our money supply by 40% if there's regulation? Doesn't make sense. Fact, in March of 2023, America's debt to GDP ratio was over 130%. In flight terms, I mean, we call that point of no return, right? So we cannot add more debt by printing more fake money. That's basically what that says. In order to reduce our debt to GDP, we need to do the opposite. But we're not doing that. America's total debt, including off-balance sheets such as entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, pensions, it's a big thing, pensions, severely underfunded, state, local, and federal pensions, over $260 trillion, not billion, not million, $260 trillion and growing. No politician will ever cut back on those things because it doesn't get them elected. It's short-term thinking. They're elected for 4 years, for 2 years, for 6 years, so they don't need to worry about this now, but that's what's going on. The biggest bomb set to explode is the derivative market. So CDOs and MBSs, collateralized debt obligations and mortgage-backed securities. This is exactly what happened in 2008. If you watched The Big Short, you guys know all about that. It's over 1 quadrillion. A quadrillion, not a billion, not a trillion, a quadrillion. That is 1,000 trillions. 1,000 trillions. That's 400 times bigger than the stock market. 400 times bigger than the stock market. These people rose after hyperinflation. Hitler, Mussolini, and I forget his name, but the president of Venezuela. Yes, Maduro. And that's happening right now, actually. The president of Venezuela, which is happening right now. And this is modern times to the right, as you can tell by the color. This is not old stuff, guys. This is not history. History repeats itself. Go ahead.
What's the name of the guy?
In the middle, that's Mussolini. Mussolini. He rose in Italy. So, how do you prepare for a recession in your agency? This is super important. May not be a bad time to sell the agency. I'm not telling you to do that, but it may not be a bad time. If you can sell, it may not be a bad time to sell the agency. I'll tell you why in a second. Change market, but if you don't plan on selling the agency, we have a battle plan at Estate AI. I pulled out some of the key things that I would recommend. I didn't put the whole battle plan in here because it's very in-depth, but this is the stuff that we were prepping for probably 8 months ago of what we would do in a market collapse, and you guys should really start thinking about that stuff. Change marketing from thriving to surviving, right? Rather than saying, hey, we're going to guarantee you X, Y, Z, we're going to show you how to basically pay your bills, right? Changing it from thriving to surviving. You can make it sound way sexier, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. Over-communicate with your team. Over-communicate on what's going on. I got this from Layla Hormozy. We all need to feed the company in order for the company to feed us. Your team is in it with you. You don't need to hide things from them. You need them to be bought in on what's going on, and you need them to double down. You're going to have to probably work nights. You're probably going to have to work weekends. It's going to require a lot of effort in order to make sure that we get fed. My dad has a saying, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? If you don't work, you don't eat. Spend more on marketing and sales. Don't cut back, spend more. Jacob was talking about this. So many people take out of the business and they don't see what's coming in because of it. Spend more on marketing. Ben, spend more on marketing, especially you. Identify other verticals that are similar. For us, if real estate agents have a massive issue, we're going to go into wholesalers. Why? Because it's an easy niche to transition into. It's pretty much the same fulfillment, same process. We already get wholesalers into our funnel, but they're going to do well in a recession because they're going after distressed sellers. So that's a massive opportunity. I don't know what it would be in your niche. You'd have to think about it. If you have questions, I can probably help you come up with some ideas. Leave emotions at the door. It's not a time to be emotional, which is why we built out the battle plan in advance so that we would already know the thought process and the solutions to some of the problems. And you can't prepare for everything. Muhammad Ali says everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, but you can do your best. Like Ben Franklin says, or Abe Lincoln says, I'd rather spend 4 hours sharpening the axe rather than 4 hours cutting down, or 3 hours cutting down the tree, right? And then, most importantly, don't be a like, it's going to happen, deal with it, but it's a massive opportunity. You guys should be excited about this because this is information that you know that the rest of the population does not. So guess what? You're able to prepare for it. So how do you prepare for it? What I'm doing to prepare, I'm not a financial advisor. I should have said this in the beginning. I'm not telling you what to do, but this is what I'm doing. Buy more gold and silver, which I've been buying since I was 16 years old. Preservation of wealth. And there's no the thing I like about precious metals is that there's no counterparty risk. The money that you have in the bank, it's a counterparty risk. It's a liability on the balance sheet to the bank. There's a counterparty risk associated with your asset, right? T-bills. Those are treasury bills. I would do short term, 4-week treasury bills where you're able to generate a yield of right now, I think it's anywhere from 4 to 5%. There is no set interest rate. It'll change. It's an auction system. So I would say it's around 4 to 5% right now, and you're able to keep a good chunk of money there. Opening more lines of credits. Guys, don't open your lines of credits and credit cards now. I think, Jose, you were talking about this yesterday. Success leaves clues, guys. You see how all the speakers pretty much say a lot of the same things? Keep opening up lines of credits. Extend your lines of credits for fixed interest rates lines of credits, right? Not variable interest because there's no point. But make sure that you have the opportunity to have that purchasing power now because guess what? When things start tightening up, you're not going to have access to it. And there's no harm in doing it. It doesn't hurt at all. It's literally no harm. It's not bad at all. You can use it. You don't have to use it. If you don't use it, it does not impact you at all. If you use it, you can use it to buy assets, to invest into your business, to grow your wealth in a time where you really might need some cash. You never know. It makes no sense as to why no one here, or everyone here should really have a line of credit. There's no reason as to why you shouldn't. Both. Interest rates will be better, but also your approval odds will be better because they're not tightening things up as much as they will when it actually happens. And then cash heavy. I'm holding a ton of cash. Steady Eye is holding a ton of cash. And most importantly, get financially literate. Don't just listen to me. You guys should be studying this stuff. Jose gets off on sales. I get off on this stuff. Develop a love for it because it is going to help you. I listen to it in the car. I listen to it in the shower. I listen to it consistently. Robert Kiyosaki is a great resource. George Gammon is a great resource. Peter Schiff is a great resource. I can give you guys an entire list of people that I would. Pat David is a great resource. He's not as intentional. It's really broad what he talks about. But if you find good videos, like he does have good videos with good speakers that are more intentional on these topics, it's very beneficial. I'm not. They're in T-bills.
Oh, so you're cash heavy in T-bills?
Yeah.
So it's not just being cash?
It's still cash.
Okay.
It's liquid.
So you can convert it like soon as. So let's say you need
I can convert it right away. I may not get my yield on it, but I can convert it if I need to right away.
Gotcha.
I still do have cash though. Yeah. I would say I'm still cash heavy, but still a lot in T-bills. Why? Because you need something, you want that liquidity. And there is a counterparty risk to T-bills. There's also a counterparty risk to the banks. Honestly, who's more likely to tank, the government or the banks? Personally, there's less counterparty risk in the T-bills, actually, now that I think about it, because the banks can go under. The government can just print more money. So your money with your T-bills will pretty much, that's guaranteed. There's pretty much no risk to that. ESBI. Anyone know what this is? Yeah, it's the cash flow quadrant. So ESBI. A lot of you guys are in the S quadrant right now. You're solopreneurs. You guys pay the highest in tax, by the way, 60%. Entrepreneurs, 40%. Business owners, 20%. Investors, 0. You guys are paying the highest tax. So right now, a lot of you guys need to get out of the S quadrant for your agencies, and you need to get into the B quadrant. Dave, working in your agency, you need to get in the B quadrant. You need to be big business. The reason why, and I'm serious, like the reason why is so that you can have more time to learn things like this, to go to events like this, to get out of the B, because once you get out of the B, the big business, you can go into the I, which is what Brandon and I are doing. We're buying properties. I'm doing it with Dr. Connor. I'm doing it with other people. We're buying properties. We're buying assets to preserve our wealth. We're using our money from our big business and getting massive tax write-offs by moving it to the I quadrant. Massive tax write-offs, legally. I've talked to one CPA that's a pussy and he does Matt's taxes, and that's why I will pay way less in taxes than Matt, but I've talked to many other CPAs that agree with what I'm saying. So I am doing that legally, and guess what? A CPA has to sign off on your return too. So a CPA isn't going to go to jail for you just so you can save a few bucks on taxes. They know what they're doing, right? If you talk to the right ones. Some of them are though. I don't recommend them. There's a difference between a CPA and a tax strategist. Our CPA, the CPA that Matt and I were going to use this year, he's not a tax strategist, not at all. He just charges you a lot of money to take what he sees in the books and putting it into a return. But once again, I double checked to make sure that the stuff I was doing was legal. I talked to a few CPAs because I didn't know. So you do want to double check. You don't want to go to jail. Those are felonies. That's federal. No, you sign off on the return. So in theory, yes. But you would have to be. It's a fiduciary, right? A CPA is a fiduciary. So you would have to basically have known. They would have to prove that you knew that he did something wrong and that you agreed and colluded with him. But a CPA is probably not going to do that. In the worst case scenario, they'll just audit you and you'll just have to pay it back. You're not going to go to, most people aren't going to jail, especially not at our level. So financial statements, guys. Poor, middle class, the wealthy. You guys need to know how to read a financial statement. Who gets books on a consistent basis with their agency? Bigger agencies. So everyone in here should probably be getting books done in their agencies, right? So the poor, they get a salary, and then they have these expenses, and then it goes out. They have nothing on their balance sheet. The middle class, they have a salary, they have a ton of expenses, they have no assets, but they have a lot of liabilities. The rich, this is what yours guys should look like, which is you have your income from interest, royalties, dividends, your business, all that stuff. You have your expenses, but then you move all of that stuff into assets, which is once again the investor column. That's what your financial statement should look like. We were going to play a game what you guys call cash flow quadrant or cash flow, but I don't think we're going to have time for that. This is the time to build wealth, and I never bet against America. I am a patriot. I believe in this country, and I believe in each and every one of you guys. That's why I'm here. That's why I do this. I don't need to do this. I think, and I genuinely believe, I'm convinced that if we are able to build better capitalists, then the capitalists will save the day. I don't believe communism works. I don't believe socialism works. I believe capitalism works. But it's up to each and every one of you guys to make a difference, to become better, to level up, to become seven-figure human beings in order to make sure that you can protect your family's financial wealth, your freedoms, and most importantly, this amazing country, the United States of America. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope that was valuable.